the holiday season a time of joy, laughter, and family gathered around the tree. But, oh, tonight, dear friends, tonight we delve into something darker, something far more unsettling. The Caldwell family thought they had embraced the season's cheer, but they had no idea what awaited them. The Watcher's ornament, a gift, yes, but with a price. And for tonight's tale, I offer you a drink as enigmatic as the ornament itself, the Watcher's gaze. A cocktail infused with the shimmering essence of silver and the deep crimson hue of mystery. Let the red eyes stare back at you as you sip, my dears, and perhaps, just perhaps, you'll catch a glimpse of what lurks in the shadows. Shall we? Now for tonight's story. The Watcher's Ornament. The Caldwell family always loved Christmas. It was the one time of year when the busy rush of daily life seemed to slow, allowing them to come together. This year, though, felt different, though none of them could put their finger on why. Perhaps it was the long hours David had been working, or the tension from a particularly harsh winter season. But they were determined to make it special, like every year before. The living room was a festive mess of boxes, garland, and tangled strings of lights. Sarah, the mother, was already elbow-deep in decorations, while her two children, Emily and Max, were busy untangling strands of lights, each light bulb flickering with excitement. "Max, you're doing it wrong," Emily teased, snatching the end of the lights from her younger brother. Max rolled his eyes. "I'm not. You just want to take over everything. Maybe because you're doing it like a caveman," she shot back, sticking out her tongue. "Come, you two," Sarah said with a laugh. "We've only got a few hours before your dad gets home. Let's try to finish before he arrives this time." Emily grinned, remembering how they had waited for David to get home late from work. He had stumbled and exhausted, only to find them fast asleep under the half-decorated tree. "We should save his favorite ornaments for him," Emily said, pulling out a clay Santa figure with chipped paint. "He loves this one." Max nodded, holding up a handmade reindeer ornament. "He made this when he was our age, right?" "That's right," Sarah said with a smile. "He always tells the story about how he and his brother tried to outdo each other in making the ugliest reindeer." The warmth of the moment filled the room, despite the cold winds howling outside. They finished decorating together, stepping back to admire their work. The tree sparkled with twinkling lights, the star on top reflecting the golden glow across the room. "Looks perfect," Sarah said softly. "He'll love it." And for a moment, everything felt just right. But that was before they found the ornament. 2 weeks before Christmas, they decided to go on a last-minute shopping trip. The streets were filled with holiday cheer carolers singing on the corners, children laughing in the frosty air. It was a chaotic but welcome escape, an opportunity for the family to bond despite their busy schedules. As they made their way through the crowded sidewalks, a man appeared in their path. He was hunched, wearing a long, ragged coat that looked older than time itself. His face was shadowed beneath a worn, dark hat, and his gloved hands clutched a small box tied with a frayed red ribbon. He held it out to anyone who would look his way, but most people walked by without so much as a glance, shaking their heads or stepping aside. Emily, however, hesitated. She was always the one to notice people others overlooked: the sad, the lonely, the forgotten. Her heart ached for the man, something about him tugging at her emotions. "Emily, let's go," Max urged, tugging on her sleeve. "He's probably just looking for money." But Emily stepped forward, ignoring her brother's protests. She offered the man a kind smile. Merry Christmas." The man's head lifted slightly, revealing pale, almost colorless eyes. He looked into hers, and for a brief moment she felt as if the entire world fell silent. "You're a kind soul," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the noise of the street. "For you, a gift." Without another word, he pressed the box into her hands. Emily opened her mouth to ask a question, but the man had already slipped back into the crowd, vanishing as quickly as he'd appeared. Sarah frowned as she approached, eyeing the small box in Emily's hands. "Honey, you shouldn't take things from strangers." "I know, Mom," Emily said, cradling the box. But he looked like he needed someone to take it. Max leaned in, inspecting the box. "It's probably just junk. You're too soft-hearted." "Or maybe it's a Christmas miracle," Emily shot back with a grin. Sarah chuckled, tousling Max's hair. "All right, let's head home. We've got enough shopping bags to fill Santa's sleigh." When they got home, the house was warm and welcoming, filled with the scent of pine and the soft glow of the Christmas tree. After dinner, the family gathered in the living room to unwind. Emily couldn't stop thinking about the strange man and his gift, so she finally decided to open the box. Inside was an ornament, unlike any they'd ever seen. It was a deep, silvery black, almost like the color of storm clouds at dusk. It was shaped like a teardrop, with intricate engravings swirling across its surface. At its center were two tiny eyes, so lifelike that Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. "Wow," Max said, leaning in closer. "That's kind of creepy, actually." Emily turned the ornament in her hand, watching the way the light reflected off the swirling engravings. "I think it's beautiful." Sarah hesitated, then forced a smile. "Well, if you like it, why don't you put it on the tree?" Emily didn't need to be told twice. She placed the ornament right at eye level, stepping back to admire it. "Perfect spot," she said softly. But as she turned away, she could have sworn she felt the tiny eyes follow her. Over the next week, everyone in the family had an interaction with the ornament, though none of them admitted it out loud. It was always there, hanging silently on the tree, yet it seemed to demand attention in a way no other decoration did. One night, Max was sitting alone in the living room, playing with his new toy car. He glanced up at the tree and noticed the ornament's reflection in the window. For a split second, he thought he saw a face, a twisted, grinning face staring back at him. He blinked, and it was gone. "Just my imagination," he mumbled, scooting away from the tree. Sarah was next. She was setting out gifts late one night after everyone had gone to bed. The house was still, except for the soft creaking of the floorboards under her feet. She turned towards the tree, and the ornament's eyes seemed to catch the light, glinting with a life of their own. She shuddered, rubbing her arms. "It's just an ornament," she told herself, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching her. Then came David. He arrived home late one evening, the house dark except for the glow of the Christmas lights. He dropped his coat on the chair and approached the tree, a tired smile spreading across his face. The ornament drew his gaze immediately, as if it were calling to him. Without thinking, he reached out to touch it. The moment his fingers grazed the cold glass, a jolt shot through his hand, leaving it numb. He pulled back, shaking his head. "What the hell?" He laughed it off, but the numbness lingered far longer than it should have. By Christmas Eve, the unease in the house had become palpable. They all felt it, something lurking just beyond their understanding. They tried to ignore it, focusing on the presents and the upcoming celebration. But the air was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the entire house was holding its breath. They went to bed that night, clinging to the hope that Christmas morning would bring the joy they so desperately needed. The next morning, sunlight glinted off a fresh blanket of snow. The house felt almost peaceful, the troubles of the past week seemingly erased by the light of day. Max and Emily rushed downstairs, followed by Sarah. They gathered around the tree, excitement bubbling as they prepared to open their gifts. But then they noticed David wasn't there. "Where's Dad?" Max asked, his voice tinged with worry. Sarah's smile faltered. "He was right behind me last night. He should be here." They searched the house, calling his name, but there was no response. Emily's eyes drifted to the tree, her heart pounding in her chest. She reached for the ornament, her hands trembling. As she lifted it, she peered inside. The tiny eyes weren't just painted glass anymore. They were her father's eyes, wide with fear. His face was pressed against the glass, his hands pounding soundlessly, pleading for help. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, her voice cracking. "Dad!" The room fell silent, and somewhere, far off, came the sound of hollow, distant laughter. And so, dear listeners, as the Caldwell family's Christmas joy turned to horror, the Ornaments' chilling gaze remained ever watchful. What seemed like a gift was a curse, its silent eyes forever haunting their once peaceful home. And perhaps, as you ponder tonight's tale, you can't help but feel the weight of that gaze lingering, as if it's watching you. But as you sip your watcher's gaze, with its shimmer and crimson hue, remember this: some gifts aren't meant to be opened, and some eyes were never meant to be seen. Until we meet again, in the shadows.